I hear you. That's the only secret I know in 46 years of associating with these people. Now, in the York Rite, in that division of the Masons, they like to drive the little cars in parades and wear the funny hats. They like to party and they like to drink. You know, in the Scottish Rite, you have three levels. You can become a third-degree Mason. If you want to go to the 32nd, you attend meetings for 32 times, pretty much, and you become a 32nd degree. If you do something in the world, you can be awarded the 33rd degree, and that's it. There is nothing more than that to find in the modern-day Masonic Lodge in America.
Well, let me ask you this, Jim. Where does the lore behind the Masons and Denver Airport spawn from? Do you know?
Yeah, everybody is fascinated with the unknown. And, of course, the Denver Airport is a very strange place. There's obviously, and pretty well documented, that there's a lot of underground levels to that.
Right.
And, of course, I've seen the wall paintings, and it's really kind of freaky because you've got the guy with a German-looking helmet and a bayonet and a rifle, and he's pointing at innocent-looking women and children, and so that's part of the allure, is just the fascination with the unknown. But I'd also like to say, though, that within Freemasonry, you have two broad circles, a huge, big, broad circle of which encompasses most of the membership, and these people are pretty much concerned with exactly what Griff just outlined. But then within Freemasonry, there is an tight inner circle who are a little bit more aware and a little bit more concerned with these ancient mysteries and ancient technologies. But of course, if you ask any Mason, are there these two circles, the answer will be no. Because if they're a member of the outer circle, they truly don't know that there's this inner circle, and if they're a member of the inner circle, then they have taken a blood oath never to reveal that. And you might say, well, how do you know that? Well, I know that by reading the writings of Albert Pike and other people, such as Manly P. Hall, who have been very, very high-ranking Masons and have been part of that inner circle, and they've actually stated that, yes, there is this inner circle. But if you ask the average Mason, he'll say no.
Well, Jim, is that no different than society as a whole, where you have the powers that be, or the people that pull the strings of the puppet governments, kind of like an inner circle, and everybody else is on the outside? Don't you think it's kind of the same thing?
Yeah, it's pretty much the same. In fact, if you'll go to just about any organization, and I don't care what it is, it starts off with a group of people with some sort of common interest or common purpose, and everything's fine. But then when it comes to actually doing something, anyone who's ever belonged to an organization realizes there's always a handful of people who make the decisions, who actually do the work, and then a whole lot of people who just sign their name and carry the card.
Folks, if you have a question and you want to call into the show, the number to call is 646-727-3387. Lines are open, and we'll be happy to take your call and question. There's a question from the chat room, Jim, and it says, I guess there's a new book coming out about some worldwide UFO display on October 13th, which has numerological significance to the powers that be. Do you know about that?
Only vaguely, but of course I always take all these certain predictions with a huge grain of salt, because I've heard such things for years, and as a general rule they don't pan out, and that's because, quite frankly, in my research with the Army's remote viewing program, which is where they use the psychic technology of what we used to call clairvoyance, and they cleaned it up and said, no, this is remote viewing, but that's what it is. The remote viewers that were in the Army's unit that I've talked to, and that's most of them, it's really fascinating because they're able to actually go back and remote view past events. And when they look into the past, everything's pretty solid because it's already happened, and they can see what's happening. But what really fascinated me was as they begin to look into the future, the further into the future they go, the hazier it gets. And that's actually kind of good, because that tells me that the future is not preordained. It's not set in stone. And that's important for all of us to understand, because if we look ahead and we don't like what we see coming up, well, then let's work and change it, because it can be changed.
I had Dr. Brooks Agnew on the show a couple weeks back, and he has an interesting view on it also, and that is that's exactly right, that the future isn't set in stone, that there can be multiple timelines that come on out, and just simply by willing everybody having a consciousness or an idea, like in this instance, let's just say a conscious awakening on 9/11 truth. And we get the majority of Americans, or let's just say the world, to come to the realization that, hey, this needs to be done. Well, then that will projects itself out and actually changes reality. And that's how he explained it to me. And that was the Mickey Mouse version. I mean, he could get into it a lot more, but he kept it toned down for me, and I certainly did appreciate that.
That's for example, whether it's 9/11, Kennedy assassination, government cover-ups, the fighting in Iraq, Afghanistan, the takeover of the New World Order, the economic collapse that we're in the middle of, regardless of what it is, that's why my whole thing is knowledge. Knowledge is the key. If a tipping point of the population can be reached, in other words, if a significant percentage of the population can simply become aware of the truth and of what's really going on, just that simple awareness will change it. Because after all, there's more of us than there are of them.
That's right. There's definitely, we do outnumber them, that's for sure. And I think if people just realized that and got it through their heads, we might actually be able to make some headway here. But in all honesty, Jim, I mean, people like you, the things that we try to do here on the show, and of other authors and radio hosts that go out and try to stick their neck out to get these agendas and these quote-unquote conspiracies brought into the light. I mean, it's because of that I think that we're starting to see an actual turn in the tide. And it's encouraging to me. The only thing is I really hope and pray that these powers that be don't try to go out with a bang. You know what I'm saying? Because the writing's on the wall there that I think they know that they are not in the long-term plan. At least that's my feeling on it. But they're trying, and they're pulling out all the stops to make sure that they maintain their control.
Exactly. They're not just going to fold up shop and leave town. They're just not. They're going to fight to the bitter end. And that's why it's incumbent upon us, all of us, each and every one of us, to start trying to figure out what's really going on. And just by that sheer knowingness, then it'll begin to change. Plus, then we can begin to get an idea of what we need to do about it. My new book, The $1 Trillion Conspiracy, How the New World Order, Man-Made Diseases, and Zombie Banks Are Destroying America, has already hit the New York Times bestseller list, and it only came out at the end of June. But I tell people, here's what's wrong, here's who caused it, and here's what we can do about it. It's all in there.
Talk a little bit about your experience with the editor this time with this book. I mean, you've published books before in the past, and have you ever run into a problem with censorship before?
Well, yes and no. I've had 4 books canceled on me, even after a signed contract. One of those, the first one, was about the Army's remote viewing program. I had that story before anybody else had ever even heard the term. I had a book that was slated to come out in the summer of 1995, and as they were going, it had passed the legal vetting. They actually had advanced copies. They had advanced sales. And as it was going to the printers, it was just shut down. They said no, we're not going to publish this. But to prove to you that that was nothing but censorship, anyone who's had any experience with publishing knows that if for whatever reason a book cannot be published and yet they have paid in advance money for it, then you have to pay back the advance. But in this case, they paid me the rest of the advance, gave me the rights to the material back, and basically essentially said just, hey, here's some money, go away and leave us alone. And then the same thing happened to me in 2002 when I had a contract with HarperCollins, a leading publisher, to publish a book on 9/11. And the same thing happened there. Even though I had passed the legal vetting, the last thing the publisher's attorney said to me was, well, you've satisfied me. Now, that didn't mean everything in the book was 100% ground truth, but what it meant was everything was well-sourced, well-supported, well-attributed, and there was no legal reason for stopping that book. And yet, right before that was to go to press, a vice president who admitted she had never even read the book said, we're not going to publish this book. And again, they paid me back the advance and said, here, go away. And that really bothered me because that was at a time when interest and concern was at fever pitch, and if truthful information had gotten to the public, it might have changed a lot of things, including the support that was being garnered at the time based on lies and deceit, which got us into the occupation of Iraq. But now this one, the $1 trillion conspiracy. So I've had books canceled on me in the past.
Mm-hmm.
This was for the first time. I had the book manuscript in, it passed the legal vetting.